All right, so let's talk about how to get a good recording at home for something like a podcast. Hey guys, so today I figured we'd talk a little bit about acoustics, and I would just give you some of the advice that I give to people when they're recording a podcast or doing something where it's someone who's not a professional audio engineer that's recording audio in their home. And I figure this video might be good for even those of you that are audio engineers, right? Because it's good to have a refresher on what to think about before recording in a home setup, especially since nowadays a lot of us are stuck at home. We are working at home, right? So this is a bit more of a beginner video, but hopefully there's some value there for you guys. Okay, so I've had to type this out a whole bunch of times for different people throughout the years, especially podcasters, because a lot of podcasters are recording in their own homes or in random locations, right? So I've actually had to type this out a few times, and it's kind of one of those things where maybe I should just kind of aggregate it all into one place. And I've done a little bit of that, but I'm not super organized with it. So, if you're working as an audio engineer, that's a great suggestion for an activity to do to get more organized, right? Is to type all these things up and have it somewhere that you can really quickly send to a client. So I've kind of got that going, but not 100% yet. So I am going to be referencing my notes here that I have that I send to podcasters. So I hope that's all right if it seems like I'm reading for a minute. It's probably because I am reading for a minute. But that's that. I don't know what to tell you guys. Okay, so the first thing that I like to mention to people is people get really focused on what microphone they should get or what interface they should get, stuff like that. But one of the most important things that I think in terms of getting good sound at home is the acoustics of the space you're in, right? So we can get really in depth with acoustics, right? But you want to think about the space you're in. And the first thing I tell people to think about is how much absorption you have in that space, right? So some of the big things that we talk about with acoustics are going to be absorption, diffusion, and then the treatment of the bass. And so diffusion and the treatment of the bass, they are very important, and they are things that people that are running a home studio need to really think about. But with things like podcasting clients, I tend to focus on absorption with them first because it's one of those things that's a little simpler and easier to address, and it will make a big difference in terms of the sound quality and what the average person notices in terms of the sound quality. So what I like to tell people is that what you want to do is you want to record in a space or a room where there's a lot of absorptive materials, right? So things that absorb, I just pulled up like a Google search of rooms here. But things that absorb are going to be things like blankets and curtains, things like that. And then things that reflect are going to be things like glass windows. They reflect sound a lot. So you kind of want to avoid that. Like if I were recording in this room, I would shut this curtain, right? Things that reflect are going to be things like hard surfaces, hardwood floors as opposed to carpets, right? So if you have multiple spaces that you can choose from, you're going to want to pick the one that has the softer, more absorptive materials. So stuff like the carpets, the soft, poofy furniture, the big curtains, stuff like that. So it's because of this concept that I usually tell people to, if they can, a really simple, easy way to get decent acoustics is to record their audio in their closet, right? So I pulled up some photos here of closets. So ideally, you want it to be, these are like really fancy closets, but ideally you want it to be a closet that's packed full of clothes, right? It doesn't matter what it looks like. You're just getting audio. What you want to do is find a space that absorbs a lot of sound. So a closet that's like full of clothes is going to be much better than a lot of rooms in the average home in terms of that acoustics absorption and not having that echoey, nasty sounding audio come out of it. So that's usually the first thing I'll talk about with clients is pick a space that has a lot of absorptive materials if possible, right? It's not always possible. I once had a podcast where they had to record in the stairwell in a college, and it was like the most echoey, nasty thing ever. But basically, if you have the choice, you want to avoid that kind of space, avoid the big echoey like gymnasium, stairwell, stuff like that. We're talking about recording at home though, so maybe I should try to focus here. But yeah, basically the first thing I talk to people is acoustics. I say look for spaces with absorptive materials, things like curtains, fluffy furniture, tapestries are great, stuff like that. And if you can, just record in your closet. That's usually the easiest way to find that kind of space in the home. So with that thought down, I do have some videos about acoustics. I think I have multiple videos about acoustics. So I'm going to try to put some of those on the screen in the form of cards for you guys. So keep an eye out for those if you want to check out those videos. All right, so the next thing that I like to mention to people is the type of thing that people will forget pretty easily. So it's basically just a reminder that you want to set your environment, right? So you want to think about what's in your space that you're recording in, and you want to make it as beneficial as possible for the sound quality. So I'll recommend that you do things like shut all your doors, shut all your windows, close the curtains, right? And that's because you often tune out that noise level that's coming from outside. But when you're actually recording, your microphone is going to pick up that noise level, and it's going to be more than you think it is. So make sure you shut all your windows and doors and then close those curtains, right? So we have more absorption if you have curtains, right? And you want to turn off anything that's in your space that might be making noise, right? So as long as you have control over it. So for example, right now they're doing construction across the street here, and you might be hearing a little bit of that, but I don't have control over it, so I'm not worrying about it. But a lot of things that I do think about are I make sure my air conditioning, my fans are off. Usually I'll do that. Usually I'll bother doing that. It's a good thing to do if you can handle it. If it's not going to become way too hot, it's kind of a trade-off. It's which do you value more type of thing. But AC, fans, stuff like that. Sometimes I'll even go into my bathroom, which is like all the way downstairs and then, through a couple doors, and I'll make sure the fan in my bathroom is off, even though realistically it's probably not adding that much noise if it is on. I'm not really sure. I just turn it off, then I don't have to worry about it, right? I also have an electronic water filter, so I'll make sure that that is not running. I also make sure my laundry machine or my dishwasher is not running, stuff like that. I'll often during the day, I'll make beans in the crock pot a lot of the time, so I'll make sure that I don't have that running when I'm actually recording something, because a lot of times the seal of the lid there, it'll get like bubbles, and then those bubbles will, make noise, and it's like this periodic weird little bubbly noise that doesn't need to be in my recordings. So I'll make sure that I don't have the crock pot going that day. Geez, my voice is going. I'm sorry, guys. And sometimes lights do make sound. So if you have a light that might make like a little buzzing or a humming sound, if it's possible, I would just turn it off. So you just want to think about all those things that might be in your space making noise and just turn them off if you can. And also make sure your phone is on silent, right? Which I think I did not do today, but that's okay. I can just edit it out. It's all right. I'm just causing myself work. It's all right. It's going to be okay. Okay, so the next couple things that I like to mention when I'm talking to clients that are recording at home, right? They all fall within this category of when they're recording multiple hosts, that kind of situation. So for example, if they're recording a Zoom call podcast, or basically just anything where you have multiple people that are recording audio in different locations, right? So this is pretty common nowadays with so many people that are, working from home, avoiding going into locations. So I figured I would talk about this really quickly. All right, so the first thing that would fall under that category is I make sure to tell everyone that they need to be wearing earplugs or headphones or something similar while they're recording, right? You don't want the audio from the other people that are in your Zoom call coming through your speakers and then getting recorded into your microphone, right? So what you want to do is you want to wear earbuds or headphones. And what I've actually seen some people do is you could take the little Bluetooth earbuds, the little wireless ones, and you can just put one in one ear and then have it be like not as visible if you're, for example, screen capturing the Zoom call so that there's like a visual component. But basically you just don't want the other people's audio to be coming out of your speakers and then getting mixed up with your audio, right? Because that makes it harder to mix. It makes it harder to edit it. And basically what happens then is you get like a little delay effect between the audio that's coming out of the speaker and the person's original audio that they're recording, right? So that's a pretty critical one in terms of getting decent sound quality. I actually have a video where I worked in a situation where that wasn't done, and I kind of showed you how I tried to minimize the effects of that. So I'll put that up on the screen for you guys too. And, just kind of on a side note, when people don't put in those earbuds, that delay between the person's audio that they're recording and then the audio that's coming out of your speakers and going into your microphone, that can be pretty significant. So it can be pretty annoying, and it also can vary because, the internet speed isn't always perfectly constant. So that makes it really hard to actually work with and edit. So it's a really important one to do. And so the other thing that has to do with recording, for example, multiple hosts in something like a Zoom call is I will give people instructions for how to sync their audio. So, you have people starting their recordings in their, respective homes or wherever they are, and they all start recording at a different time. And sometimes it can be kind of difficult to line up their audio afterwards. So what I recommend they do is have everyone except for one person switch from their headphones to using their actual speakers, right? Which is what you don't want to be doing while you're actually recording your podcast or whatever it is. But have them do that just for this temporary sync. And then you have the person that's still using their headphones or hasn't switched over to speakers, have them clap on the screen. So what that does is we have their clap, which will be a spike in their audio file. And then we also have their clap coming through the other people's speakers and coming into their microphones. So then we have spikes on their audio files as well. And that makes it really easy to line it up really quickly. And I've seen people have trouble with this one. You just want to remember that only one person has to clap. The idea is not to all clap at once or anything. You just need one person to clap, and you need the other people to make sure that the audio from that clap is coming out of their speakers and into their microphone. And then the other thing you want to do if you're using that method is to make sure that you guys do not forget to then return to using your earbuds or your headphones. You don't want to actually be recording your whole podcast or whatever it is with your speakers on. Okay, so I only have a couple more things here, so bear with me. But one of the other things I tend to tell people when they're recording at home is to maybe read up on gain staging a little bit. So you don't have to go crazy in depth with it. You certainly can if you want to. But just learn some of the basics of gain staging. It can really help the quality of your audio. So I've actually talked about this concept before in a couple videos. So I am actually going to put cards for those up on the screen. If I have enough cards left, I probably do. So I'll link to those. But this seems to be one of the biggest things that beginners tend to mess up on. So I think it's important to, just learn the basic, like the really basic stuff. So for example, you want to get a healthy signal. So when you're looking at like your audio meter for your microphone signal coming into whatever the system is that you're using, you want to make sure that it's not like barely visible. You want to make sure that you don't have a super low signal to noise ratio, because then you're going to have a lot of noise when you crank it up. It's not going to sound as good. And I actually went into more detail with that on my videos about gain staging. So I'm not going to go crazy into depth with that. Just check out the cards. But you want to make sure that you're not registering at the very bottom of the meter with your microphone. You want to make sure that you have a good, healthy signal. It's not super quiet. And then on the other side of that, you want to make sure that you don't have a crazy hot signal. So like too loud of a signal, right? So when we say like a signal's too hot, that means it's usually too loud, right? And so the way that you can tell if your microphone's coming in too hot or too loud into your system is if you look at that meter, right? That's registering the microphone level. If it's getting to the very top of the meter and it's lighting up, usually there's a little rectangle above the meter that's kind of separate from the rest of the meter. And so often we will call that the clip light indicator, and it'll often be a red rectangle when it actually lights up. And what that's telling you is that you're passing the threshold that the digital audio can actually register. So it's actually clipping off the tops, the peaks of your waveform, right? So what happens then is it's just flattening the top of the waveform. You're actually missing data, and it'll cause a distortion effect if it's happening too often. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on that. I believe I have other videos that are covering that topic as well. So I'll dig through and see if I can put a card up on the screen for that. I've definitely talked about it in those gain staging videos that I've linked to. So check that out if you want more details on that. But basically, the cliff notes are learn a little bit about gain staging, and what you want to do is make sure it's not too quiet a signal and it's not too loud a signal, right? You want to be in like the Goldilocks zone a little bit. Not that audio people call it that at all. That's just me being weird. Oh, and one more thing that I'll tell clients when talking about gain staging is it is better to be a little too quiet with your signal than to overblow it and have it be distorting, right? So if you're not sure if you want to err on the side of being too loud versus too quiet, it's usually better to err on the side of being a little too quiet, right? But we do want to hit a healthy range. All right, so that's pretty much it. The only other things that I'll mention to clients is to make sure you have a glass of water ready when you're recording. I recommend Throat Coat tea a lot. I swear I'm not sponsored by them at all, but I do recommend them a lot because I use them It's great for helping keep your voice going, especially if you have to talk for a really long period of time. It'll help your voice from kind of breaking down from that use. And it's just really good stuff. So throat coat tea, if you haven't tried it, I would definitely try it. So I'm going to put a link in the description below for you guys. It really helps keep your voice from breaking down. I actually didn't make any today, so my voice is like already going from this one episode, and I'm going to try to record 2 more. So I'll probably take a break and make some after this one. But yeah, water, throat coat tea, whatever helps you just kind of keep going and keep your voice at its best. Especially, if you're recording something that includes a lot of talking. So I think that's pretty much it. I think that's pretty much everything that I will mention to clients when they're recording at home. So yeah, I hope that helps some of you guys. As always, let me know what you think in the comments below. We can start chatting about it. I love doing that. And, like, comment, subscribe if you liked this video, all that stuff that YouTube people love. I would appreciate all that stuff. And if you do want to support my channel more directly, I do have a Patreon. So it's patreon.com/CatoNoise. And my patrons do get access to additional content. So I think that's about it. And I come out with new videos every Wednesday. And thank you for watching. Okay.